Hi, this is Dan Heisman, and we're continuing with our series of YouTube videos to help you play chess better. One of the things we do in our series is we play think out loud games against the computer so you can hear how a good player thinks out loud. Now, I'm not as good as I was 40 years ago, but I still think I have a pretty good process, even if I miss things here or there. So we've been playing a series of games against the mid-level computer Beth O, which is good enough to beat me if I'm not careful, and I should certainly win the overwhelming majority of the games, but it's not always going to be 100%. Anyway, let's get started on the game. The computer will pick out the color at random. There we go. Let me change the window to the size that we want. Okay, let's put the top up here. I'm going to be playing faster than the time limit allows because we only want like a 30-40 minute video. We don't want a 2-hour video. So pardon my playing faster than what time management would say. All right, there's two ways to play Beth O. You can try to outbook her, or you can try to take her out of the book. Let's outbook her today. Let's see what happens. We'll play a King's Indian. We'll give it a try. Knight F6. G6, Knight C3, Bishop G7, E4, D6. Somebody riding a motorcycle outside. F3, Simish. All right, I tried the queen sack line one time against Beth O. We can try it again if she lets me. Castle. Bishop G5, that's a rare line. So the main line is Bishop E3. So now we're a little bit out of the book. I like to play H6 here, so let's play H6. Bishop F4, that's a little unusual. Bishop H4 is the main line. Now I can play for E5. Since white can't play F3, I could play Knight BD7. I could play Knight FD7. I could play C5, but against Bishop F4, C5 doesn't seem right. I'm thinking that Knight FD7 followed by E5 looks pretty good. If I play Knight BD7 and then play E5, if I play Knight BD7, he plays E5 right away. D takes E. D takes E. My knight on F6 is a little awkward. I'm going to play Knight FD7. Knight FD7 here. Queen D3, that's not a wonderful looking move. After I play E5, the C5 square can become weak in some lines. All right, so let's hit the bishop with E5. E5, that's the idea. Bishop E3. Now I can capture and play Knight C5 and hit the queen. It's one way to play it. I could also play C6. Okay, so let's think about this. E takes D, Knight takes D, Knight to C5. If Bishop takes C5, D takes C5, Queen takes D8, Rook takes D8. He's weak on the dark squares. That's a good line for me. If I play Knight C5, he plays Queen E3. Not so sure about that. Maybe I can play Bishop takes, Queen takes, Knight E6 or something. Pawn takes pawn looks correct. I could also play C5, I guess, to close things up. How about E takes D, Bishop takes D, Knight E5. Then he plays Queen to E3 or something, and then I can play Knight C6. That looks pretty reasonable. If he plays Knight D5, I can play Bishop E6 or something. All right, well, let's take the pawn. Bishop takes. And now I'm looking at Knight to E5, followed by Knight C6 hitting the bishop, winning either at tempo or the bishop pair. That looks pretty good. All right, let's do that. Knight E5. Queen E3. So that's what I expected. And now I can play knight on B8 to C6, and I win the bishop pair because the bishop has nowhere to go. And I also get dark square weaknesses. If he plays castle queenside, I have knight takes d4, rook takes d4. And then I could play, you know, something like bishop e6. Knight takes f3 check. Knight takes f3 doesn't work. All right, well, knight on b8 to c6 looks like a good move. Let's do it. He does castle as I thought. Okay. So, I can take that bishop if he takes with the rook. I can't play knight g4 because f takes g4, bishop takes d4, queen takes g4. Wins. I could play knight takes d4, rook takes d4, queen g5. If he plays f4, I might have something. Maybe not. But knight takes d4 looks like a good move. Then I could play maybe bishop e6. I can also play queen e7. No, I can't play queen e7 because of knight d5. All right, so let's take the bishop first. Do I have anything better? Let me see if I have a discovery. Knight takes c4. If he takes bishop takes c4, knight takes d4, rook takes d4, I lose 2 pieces for a rook. I don't see any great discoveries with my e5 knight. Knight takes f3 doesn't work. Knight takes c4 doesn't work. It's always worth looking for the tactics. Queen g5 right away. Doesn't look promising. He can play f4, forking my queen and my knight on e5. All right, so let's play knight takes d4. We're just trying to get the bishop here, and he has to take with a rook. Okay. All right, so if I play c6, he can play queen d2, and it's hard for me to guard my d-pawn. That's not a terrible position for me after queen a5 to sack the pawn, but I really don't want to do that. It seems to be better to play something like bishop e6 first, and then I could play c6, and if he plays queen d2 at queen a5, rook takes d6, I could take on c4 maybe. So I think playing bishop e6 looks good. If he plays bishop e6, if he plays f4, I have knight g4 hitting the queen and the rook. I don't think that's good for him. Queen g5 right away, f4, knight g4, f takes g5, knight takes e3, hitting the rook and the bishop. That looks pretty good, but of course you can always play queen takes g5, h takes g5, which is good for me. Queen g5, f4, knight g4. Suppose he just plays queen d2. Do I have any tactics there? He's hitting my queen with the f-pawn. I guess I could play queen to a5 or something. I don't trust queen to g5. Queen to g5. Trading queens is good for me, but it's not terrible for him. Queen g5, f4, knight g4, queen d2. I guess I could play bishop d4, f takes g5, bishop e3, pinning the queen to the king. Interesting line. Let's count that. Queen g5, f4, knight g4. We've already seen f takes g5, knight takes e3, hits the rook and the bishop. He can't play rook d1 in that line. He might be able to trap my knight. So queen g5, f4, queen d2. Bishop takes d4. If he takes back on d4, I move my queen. If he takes my queen, f takes g5, I play bishop e3. And I got the rook for the queen, and then I'm winning the exchange there. All right, so queen g5, f4, knight g4. Can he play queen g3 or something? My knight is guarded by the bishop on c8. I could play queen to c5, hitting the rook again. It looks a little a little gray. Let's look at other ideas. Bishop e6 is very straightforward. Hits the c4 pawn. Threatens c5 in some lines where I can then just take the pawn on c4 by removing the guard. The idea is to play maybe like c6, queen c7. So queen g5 looks like a good move. He can always trade queens, then the endgame's good for me. Then he plays knight d5, hitting my c-pawn. A little awkward for me to guard it. If I play c6, he has maybe knight check followed by rook takes d6. So queen g5, queen takes g5, h takes g5, knight d5. Can I move my knight and hit his rook? Not sure that really works. All right, let's just play bishop e6 then. Bishop e6. All right, so knight d5 now. All right, well, here if I hit the knight with c6 and he moves the knight, if he goes to f4, I guess I could play queen to g5, but he has h4 then. Should I give him the bishop pair? I really don't want to do that. I could play bishop takes knight. And then if he takes with the c-pawn, I could play c6 and open up the c-file. If he takes with the e-pawn, I could play rook e8. So that's not bad. Bishop takes d5 is pretty good. c6, knight f4. Is there anything I can do about that? Knight f4. If I play queen g5, he can play h4. Okay, let's take a look at some other ideas. Knight c6, letting the knight sit on d5 doesn't look right. Knight takes c4, bishop takes c4, bishop takes d4, queen takes d4, loses 2 pieces for the rook. Not good. Bishop takes d5, c takes d5. I can play queen e7. I could play c6, but after he plays d takes c6, b takes c6, the queen side is open. He can hit my d pawn again. Well, it doesn't look bad. I think bishop takes d5 is the right move. Let's play that. Gives back the bishop pair, but I'm ahead in development. He takes with the rook. All right, so now I can play c6, and when he moves the rook, I can move the queen, like queen to e7 or c7, maybe f6 even. Queen f6, threatening b2, and then I could play rook d8, or I could even play queen a5. I could play queen f6 right away, threatening to move the knight and hit b2. So he has to do something about it. If he plays queen d2, I've got some ideas. I could play knight c6 and knight d4. Queen f6 looks interesting. Could play h5 with the idea of playing bishop h6 in some lines, but not yet. c6 looks interesting. c6, rook back, queen a5, hitting the a pawn. Then rook f d8. That way I can always play bishop f8 if I need to. It's not bad. c6, rook moves, queen a5. He makes a move. Rook f d8, threatening to play d5 in some lines, blasting open the center. I could even play c5 and knight c6 and knight d4 in some lines, but he has knight e2 against that. I could play bishop to f6, threatening bishop g5, but he can always just move the king. And he can also play f4 in some lines. Not so sure about that. Okay, well, c6, move the queen, move the rook, finish development, threaten to blast open the center. I could move the queen first, giving me the option of playing knight c6. Queen f6, knight c6. Then knight d4. That might be a more accurate move order. Queen f6, if he plays f4, I have either knight c6 or knight g4. One of those got to be good. Queen f6 threatens, moves like knight g4 hitting the queen and the b2 pawn, or maybe knight takes f3. All right, let's do that. Queen f6. And he plays queen e2. But now the queen is blocking the knight, and the knight can't. So now I could play knight c6, knight d4, and then maybe even c6 trapping the rook. If the rook goes to a5, I have nice things. I could also play c5 followed by knight c6. c5. If f4, then knight c6 and knight d4. c5 looks good. I'm getting my knight to d4 in two moves. He can move his queen and then move his knight to e2. But that takes a lot of time. Meanwhile, c5, he moves queen d2, knight c6, knight e2. So what do I get out of that? c5, queen d2. Knight c6, knight e2. What's going on? Well, so my candidate moves are knight c6, c6, and c5. I could play rook fd8 first, but I don't see why I need to do that. I could play h6 to threaten to get the bishop over to, I'm sorry, h5 to threaten to get the bishop to h6 in some lines and stop his pawn from going to f4. But I'm not too sure I'm worried about that either. If I play c5 and he plays f4 and I play knight c6 and he plays e5, d takes e5, f takes e5, I can play knight takes e5. All right, so that's no good. So I'm looking at c5, queen d2. Does put his queen back online with the king. Knight c6, knight e2. If that's good for me, I'm going to play that. But if I don't see anything there, I might have to play something else. So knight c6, he can't let me play. Sorry, c5. He can't let me play knight c6, knight d4 with the queen still on e2. I don't think that's going to play for him. I could just play c6. Then he's probably going to play rook d1. And then I could play b5 and blast open the queen side. c6, rook d1, b5, c takes b5, c takes b5, queen takes b5, rook a b8 looks strong, hitting that b2 square a million times. Maybe later I have knight d3 check. c6, rook moves, b5, c takes b5, c takes b5. He could just play king to b1. Queen takes b5 looks very dangerous. So I have a lot of different ideas here. c6 followed by b5 is an idea. And c5 followed by knight c6 and knight d4 is an idea. I could play knight c6 right away, threatening knight d4 followed by c6. If he moves the queen to d2, I can play knight to e7, making the rook move. Knight c6 is pleasant. I could play a6 and b5. C6 and b5 certainly looks reasonable, opening up the queen side. If I play c6, where is he going to put the rook? On d2? b5, b5, c takes b5, c takes b5, queen takes b5. Now I don't have threats against b2 because the rook on d2 is guarding it. Okay, so is it better just to play knight c6 right away? I could play threaten knight b4, forking the rook and the pawn, but if I play knight b4, he can play rook a5. I could play knight c6 and then a5, with the idea of playing knight b4 or maybe a4, a3, opening the diagonal. That actually looks pretty good. If I play a5, if I open that diagonal, I might be able to get my queen to a1. And if I play knight c6, I'm threatening knight b4. Can he play c5 right away? I guess he can. a5, c5. D takes c5, rook takes c5. Knight c6. I don't think c5 is really much of a threat. Of course, I can always play c5 now, like I said. c5, queen d2. If knight c6, rook takes d6. So c5, queen d2, rook f d8. Followed by knight e2. Doesn't look quite right for me. Kind of like the idea of getting that pawn up to a3 or making him play a3. a5, c5 doesn't really hurt me. Yeah, I'm not too worried about c5. Let's play a5. h3. Well, okay, that's not really threatening g4. He could have done it anyway. So let's keep tickling that long diagonal and play... Well, let's play... Do I want to play knight c6 first, threatening knight b4? Or do I want to play a4? a4. If I get my pawn to a3, then all kinds of bad things are going to happen to him. If I play a4 and he plays a3 and I play knight c6, I might be able to get my knight up to d4 and b3 check in some lines too. All right, let's play a4. King b1. That's a prudent move. So now a3, if he plays b3, I can move my knight and threaten queen a1 check. That looks awfully strong. If he plays b takes a3, rook takes a3, queen to b2. In fact, on b takes a3, I don't even take it. I'll just move the knight right away. Maybe knight to c6. He can't stop the diagonal. All right, let's play a3. Okay, so now a1 is like unstoppable. If I play knight c6, I've got all kinds of pieces all over the place. If he plays e5, I can just take it with the knight. Could take it with anything, really. I could take it with the pawn, too. I think knight to c6 is the right idea. I don't like moving the knight anywhere else. I'm threatening queen a1 check, king c2, queen takes a2 check, crush. All right, I think the knight's going to be helpful on b4 in some lines. Let's play knight c6. There's that e5. All right, so I can take with the pawn, but that blocks me. I may as well just take with the knight. And then I'm threatening to move the knight and play queen a1 check again. And he still can't put anything on a long diagonal. All right, so let's play knight takes e5. He's got to move the queen at some point. All right, so there he moves the queen, but now when I move my knight, I'm threatening mate. So knight takes c4 hits the queen. If he plays queen d4, I can play queen takes d4, rook takes d4, bishop takes d4, bishop takes c4, winning the exchange. If he plays queen e2, I have queen a1 check. So knight c4 threatens the queen, and it threatens mate. I probably have better moves, but once you see a win. Knight takes c4. He's got to stop the mate. He has to either put something on a long diagonal, queen d4, or he has to play like queen to f2 or something. Queen f2, queen e2, queen e2, queen a1 check looks like crush. So knight takes c4, queen d4. If I then play knight d2 check, queen takes d2, queen a1 check, king c2, queen b2 check, king d1. There's no reason to do that. Knight takes c4, queen d4, knight e2 check, d2 check, queen takes d2, queen a1 check, king c2, queen takes a2 check, king somewhere. Yeah, I'm probably winning, but you know, why not? Knight takes d4, knight takes c4, queen d4, queen takes d4, rook takes d4, bishop takes d4, bishop takes c4, and I'm up a lot. All right, let's look at some other lines. Knight to c6. He can't play queen d4. So knight c6. What's he going to play? I'm threatening queen b2 mate. If he plays queen d2, then I have queen a1 check, but now I'm not sacking a knight. King c2, queen takes a2 check, king d1, queen takes b3 check. That looks awfully crushing. Then I can push the a pawn. I think knight c6 might be better than knight takes c4. Knight takes c4 wins, but knight c6 keeps the queen out of d4, which means I'm going to get my queen to a1 with all kinds of problems. All right, I'm going to do that. Knight c6. He moves the king already. Okay, so I can fork the rook and the king, or I can check him and get him out in the open. Knight b4 check. I guess I could play rook f e8 first. And he doesn't have a lot of places to go with the queen, and then maybe I'll get my queen into c3 check. Yeah, rook f e8 can't hurt. Let's do that. Okay, so here we go again with queen to b2 check, king c3. Meh. Yeah, probably this made it a little easier on him, but that's okay. Knight b4 check, queen takes b4, queen b2 check. Does that do anything? King d3. Queen b2 check, king d3, knight e5 check, rook takes e5, wins the exchange. That looks pretty good. All right, let's go for something like that. Queen b2 check. Okay, so now I can check on the back rank, and if he puts the queen in the way, I can take the a pawn. Queen b1 check, queen c1, rook e1 check. Yeah, removing the guard. Queen b1 check, queen c1, rook e1 check, king takes c1, queen takes c1 check. All right, queen b1 check. Okay, when you see an ABC sequence and the person plays the move, you don't play rook e1 right away. You double check it. All right, so rook e1 check. I might even have better moves, but rook e1 check. If king takes c1, queen takes c1 check. If king to d2, queen takes c1 check. All right, that looks pretty good. Here we go. Check. All right, queen takes c1, double check, double check, double check. Any reason why not to do that? Nope, take it. Okay, king is on a dark square. All right, lots of ways to win here. I want to really guard that g3 square. I want to get the rook in the game. Let's just play rook e8. Can't be bad. Everything wins now, of course. Knight e2. I could play queen e3 check followed by bishop e5 check. Can't be bad. All right, let's do that. Queen e3 check. Okay, let's play bishop e5 check. He'll probably have to take with the rook. All right, what's the best way to take it? With a knight or with a rook or with a pawn? Someone would like to get my rook or my knight into the attack. He's running out of moves here, really. Knight takes, allows knight d3 in some lines. Let's just take with a knight. It doesn't matter. Yep, he's running out of moves. Knight d3, threatening queen f2 check followed by bunch. Or I could threaten the h2 square somehow. Well, knight d3 can't be bad, so let's play it. Knight d3. He really doesn't have any moves. Okay, so his king's going to go... I guess winning 2 pieces for the rook is good because it gets rid of his defenders. So queen f2 check. Then rook takes e2. Queen takes e2. Okay. Knight f4 comes in. Rook g1. He's almost in Zugzwang. Let's play g5. Pawn takes, pawn takes. King moves. Now I can threaten queen h4 mate. If he plays g3, I have a million ways to win. All right, queen here. g3, all right, so queen takes f3 check is good. Knight to knight to e2 is good. I'll play knight e2. Okay. Lots of ways to play this. Don't really need to take a lot of time to figure out the fastest mate. Let's just play queen f1 check first. Then I'll play queen takes f3. Okay, getting closer here. Knight f4. Okay, knight e2. Takes. All right, let's see here. If I have the extra pawn, check. Pawn here. Pawn here. Check. Pawn here. Check. And checkmate. Okay, hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give me a like. You can subscribe to the channel. If you want to see some of my past videos where I play the computer, I think this was the 8th one. Otherwise, if you don't like these kind of games, we have all kinds of other games. We have all kinds of videos. We cover all kinds of chess improvement. Hopefully you enjoyed the channel. We'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye. Be safe, by the way. Please be very safe. We're in the middle of the coronavirus thing. You may be listening to this years later, in which case you say, oh, it was terrible, but we finally got out of it. Or you may be listening to it tomorrow and say, yep, I'm going to be careful. But either way, please be careful. Bye.